Essentially, the draft goes back 100 years to the Civil War. Based upon experience then and in World War I, we devised a draft system which was designed to choose enough people to meet our military needs at any particular moment, and to choose them from people who didn't have more important things to do for the country. So the problem was how to choose the few people from the many.
In other words, if you were a poor young man from a black ghetto, there was no way in the world that you were going to take the option of, say, going to college, or, say, being an executive in a defense industry. So if you were middle class and white, it was great. You go on to college, you go into graduate school, you go into businesses or occupations that were deemed by the selective service system to be in the best interest of the United States. Then you wouldn't have to serve.
The draft system was chronically unfair. It was poor people fighting rich men's wars. The combination of deferments and other provisions of the draft law were very unjust and very inequitable.
Resistance to the draft was strongest on the campuses. Student deferments postponed the draft a few years, allowing time to consider the alternatives. In the campus teach-ins, students debated the implications of opposing the war. Ultimately, even drastic options like exile began to seem plausible.
In most cases, they went before their draft boards. There were others who, worked their way back into college to get their exemptions, carry it for 4 years. Some went into divinity school. Others looked at the option of going to Canada, and some went to Canada.
Ken Sherman was a Lutheran minister at the time in Buffalo, New York. Like a growing number of church leaders who opposed the Vietnam War, he decided to risk jail himself in order to help young men leave the country.
Kelly, when we get to the bridge, we'll make sure that we get our stories straight on crossing. The bridge attendant will lean in and he'll say, you're a citizen of what country? You say United States.
The early people I brought over, I dressed them actually in my clerical garb, put a collar on them, wore a black suit, wore my own collar, and essentially they were like young seminarians going to a conference in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And so there were key points on the border spots in Detroit, in Buffalo, in Boston area, in Messina, New York. There the Albany Draft Counseling Center provided assistance. And so each of these centers became networks for assisting people. And what we provided was essentially an underground railroad run by 30 families that were not in touch with each other. None of these families knew who the other families were on the list.
No, citizens of what country?
But when I got to the other side, it was as if I were 10 years younger. It's like this weight of what am I going to do about the war that was on my shoulders. It was lifted. I had to wrestle with that problem every day of my life.